You kind of take it for granted when you don't.
Yeah, when you first move in,
Maybe
it's
I mean, we still don't have a bottle opener, but something like that.
you have a fridge, a TV,
Yeah.
piano, drums.
Yeah.
No bottle.
Yeah. Most of the instruments were in here before a lot of the other random stuff.
That's how the male brain works, you know? It's glorious. The female brain would be like, we gotta get the plants in here, bottle opener.
We had one plant and it just died. We killed it. Like it did. Yeah, unfortunately, it didn't make it past. Like,
what was the plant?
It was a money tree.
Oh,
I don't know if you've ever heard of a money tree.
Oh, that's a bad omen. Oh no!
It died. It's actually out there still on the porch, but you can see it there. But
trying to escape.
Yeah, it's not much to look at it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, some stuff.
Dan Horvath, thanks for coming on, man.
Absolutely.
So, did you want to talk about anything in particular?
Well, I would love to talk about, I guess, World War II research.
Okay,
I don't know if that's what the listeners want to hear. They will. We will put them through this.
That's right.
You have no option.
Like I say, the listeners, we take a lot of liberties.
Okay.
Listeners, I don't know.
Okay, yeah.
So,
there's part of that.
Sorry?
There's part of that. And then also this idea of hunting for treasure. We kind of talked about this maybe 2 weeks ago.
I'm so down.
And that spills into other topics, not just
okay.
military aviation research, but other areas in life.
Dan, I love it.
Okay.
I love it. Okay. Because I was going to ask you about your book, but that seems like a bigger jumping off point.
Yeah, that's let's start them in the shallow one first.
There you go.
All right.
But I'll probably jump in with some questions.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
All right, go for it.
Yeah. So I guess what's my obsession? What's my flavor of tism? Well, might need to cut that one out.
We ship it once it's pressed.
All right.
Yeah, no.
Buyer side risk. Yeah, I guess this fascination with military aviation history really started at a young age on a dark, stormy night. The males on my family, all like my dad, like his side of the family, even on my mom's side, we've all been really fascinated by mechanical and technical things. I don't know if that's a male trait or just we're exposed to it more and we love it. When you're young, you get like a dump truck as a toy and you play with it, or you get a little model plane and it lights a fire in you. And for me, that was aviation. Some people have cars. For me, it was aviation. And it started off more in the like airliners, more commercial side, not general aviation like small planes with propellers, but more like large planes that would take you across a country, across an ocean.
Right.
And I was exposed to that because I have a lot of family overseas. So this was like personal to me because, you know, every fourth summer we'd get on the big plane and we'd fly over to Europe to see grandma and grandpa. And I loved that because it was mechanical. It was like there was just a lot going on and it was kind of a rare occurrence. So it was special. There was this novelty to it. And I loved it. I loved flying, everything about aviation. And then, unbeknownst to me, my dad, he was getting more into the military side of it. So he kind of made this transition from the commercial side to the military side. And being Hungarian, he was really focused at what happened during the Second World War over Hungary. A lot of research around the, I guess a bit of a backtrack without going all the way back to Adam and Eve. Hungary was on the Axis side in World War II, so they had to fight against the Western Allies, the US, Great Britain, and Commonwealth, and the Eastern Allies, the Soviet Union, and then all those countries, Bulgaria, Romania, that fought with them. Because of access to American research material, the American and Western Allied side had a, that history has been pretty much written. It's almost 100% complete. It can never be 100% complete, but it approaches 100% completion.
Right. The history of Hungary in World War II.
Yes, the aviation side with the Western Allied being the enemy. But the Eastern Allied side, like the Soviet Union, Romanians, the Bulgarians, that side was kind of left untold. It still is to this day. Mostly because access to that material is a lot more difficult to come by.
Sure, yeah.
And so when he started to get involved with this area of interest, he attempted to do the Western Allied side, but you quickly realize that there's people that are miles ahead of you researching that.
Right.
And so he opted to, okay, maybe we can try the Eastern Front side, the Eastern Allied side. And he started to gain some traction there. He built up this amazing network of researchers, historians, archivists, actual people who fought, and started to do that research. And so he began to really excel in that area. He published his first book in 2013. And then a couple years went by. We took a trip to Hungary in 2016, and he invited me out on a dig expedition, for lack of a better term.
Wow.
And he already kind of went on one, but he's like, you know what, Dan, you're in your late teens. Yeah. This is more appropriate for you. Let's try to do this. There is some inherent risk when you go out on these things, because you never know what you'll find. You could find anything from nothing all the way up to live ammunition. So there is a little bit of risk. He's like, I think you're old enough to be exposed to this. We're going to do it very safely, but let's go forward.
So you're just going to like some parts of Hungary that have had like some World War II wreckage.
Yes.
And you're just doing some archaeology.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Not like a professional archaeologist where they have their little like makeup brush and they're like doing that. No,
it's a lot more kind of, you're just trying to find what's there.
Exactly. We're going in very rough. We have our shovels and we're just digging up.
Just straight up with shovels.
Pretty much.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Which is like, it's pretty wild. So don't picture that like quintessential archaeologist with the little brushes and they're digging up old bones.
Yeah. All right, we'll carry on. I mean, I got a million questions about that.
Okay. Yeah. So in 2016, we go out and we go to an area in the woods beside this village that is known to have a lot of World War II action going on. There's trench networks. There's craters here and there. There's a Jewish cemetery behind the woods where unfortunately a lot of people were killed and they were just kind of put there in their own little cemetery. So there was a lot of action that went on there.
Yeah.
And so my dad's friend Peter, he has a metal detector and he takes us out and we're in the woods and it's just like this awakening moment of everything that you read of in books is kind of in front of you. When you're young, you read of like the trenches and then suddenly you're in a trench. You're reading about finding treasure, and then here you are with a metal detector. Like it just kind of all comes together and you're there, and for me it was very, very exciting. Anyway, the climax of this trip was I ended up finding the impact point where a German fighter plane crashed.
Wow. And
so we ended up finding the wreckage of this plane. And it's in this massive crater about the size of this room and the kitchen. So maybe like 2 meters, the crater goes down 2 meters and there's different coloration of soil. So like it's wooded, so there's brown soil everywhere. But at the bottom of the pit or the crater, there's a bunch of sand that's been kicked up, which makes sense because when you have a 3,000 kilo, what is that? Like almost a 2-ton object hitting the ground.
Right.
It goes down maybe 5-7 meters and it kicks up a lot of the soil deep down.
Right.
And you got to see the different coloration of the soil. So again, that kind of harkens back to when you're very little and you hear about paleontologists digging up dinosaur bones and they're going down the canyon and they can track the different color of soil as they go deeper down and those like the different ages. Almost like rings on a tree.
Yeah.
Right? Man, there's so many parallels you can draw here. and for me, this was like, oh, this is amazing.
Yeah.
And Peter knew that this plane was somewhere in the woods,
right?
But he didn't know where.
Yeah.
And so again, there was that novelty of, on my first time around, I ended up finding this. Complete beginner's luck, by the way. I don't want to...
German plane.
Yeah, I don't want to toot my own horn, but it was like, I found it. Like, it was great.
crazy.
And we ended up finding pieces of aluminum that indicate that it's a plane.
Yeah.
We find broken pieces of plexiglass, which is what would have been glazed around the cabin, so the pilot would have seen through.
Yeah.
We find bits of ammunition, both spent and live. So there's that. I end up finding a rotten hand grenade, which is pretty fun.
Wow.
And each subsequent time we went back, we kept throwing the hand grenade in the same foxhole. And there's a legit fox or a weasel or something uses that foxhole to be in. And every year we go back, the animal throws the grenade back out.
Yeah.
So we kind of have this running joke between the three of us about this grenade, and we're kind of playing hot potato with it, with this animal in the ground. And it's been going on for like 3-4 years at this point, which is great. So that moment in 2016 was just like, it lit a fire under me.
Yeah.
I'm like, you know what? I want to switch from commercial aviation to military aviation.
Right.
And so for the next, 3.5-4 years, I kind of slowly begin to develop a bigger interest in this. I try to read up on it, do my own research, and then COVID hits. And there's like very little that anyone can do. You're kind of boxed in. You can't really go travel. But my dad and I, we became rather close, and this subject is probably one of the reasons why, because we just both loved it. And then we talked about a particular subject, that being aerial victory claim verification, for lack of a better term.
Yeah.
And he would post about this on forums to other researchers and historians, authors, enthusiasts, and you would get into these sometimes heated debates about whether a claim would be accurate or not accurate in terms of pilot A actually shot down a enemy aircraft or not. Right. And then how do you verify that? What was the enemy's plane in terms of type? What was its serial construction number? Who flew it? Right. What unit was it from? All this stuff. Wow. Very kind of technical in nature, almost like a Sherlock Holmes type of case. Yeah. It's like casework. Yeah. And so there was a lot of popularity online around this. And then we kind of began to discuss, like, the proper format for such a monumental task is not a forum on some website. It should be in a book. Sure, yeah. So I'm like, you know what? We have this... it out on Twitter or something. Yeah, exactly. It kind of gets lost in the void. Yeah. So we're like, the proper format is in something more concrete, more tangible, more physical, like a book. Why don't we write a book? We've been presented with this unique opportunity, that opportunity being COVID, of we can't really go out, we can't really do too much. We have all this time on our hands. I was finishing my master's at that point. So I was kind of in a transition period in my life. I'm like, all right, let's write the book. We write the book, it gets published in 2022, and from other researchers and authors' perspectives, it's excellent. To this day, we haven't heard any negatives about it from those researchers. We haven't heard any serious opposition to the findings in the book. It's been used by researchers, historians, enthusiasts, people on YouTube that are really big in the World War II space. Yeah. It's been used by professors. Funny enough, I found this out through a YouTube video, but there's a professor in it's the military college in London, and he's using the book. And he loves it. And there's other, like, even military personnel are using it. Wow. It's just fascinating that what you create can be used by others that you deem as your peers. Yeah, yeah. And you almost gain like an equal footing with them. Yeah, for sure. And so that was just like, wow, this is so cool. Yeah. I loved it. Yeah. And then from that, it kind of developed even further into, all right, by the way, I co-authored that book with my dad. It wasn't just like a standalone effort. I'm like, all right, I'm going to tackle a new topic on my own. And so that's developing into the book, I guess, trilogy that I'm writing right now. Right. And that's where we are in terms of book writing. Right. that's the whole kind of lineage of this childhood fascination with aircraft on the commercial side, developing into the military side, developing into the research side, into the book writing side.
Right. So what were the findings
in the book?
In the book,
yeah, very interestingly, it was that not all claims, despite them being verified at the time, so there was a particular process they would have to go through. The pilots would have to fill out a form. It would have to be witnessed by XYZ, the other people in the air or people on the ground. And then it would get sent to the people higher up, and they would collect all these claims, make sure there's no duplications, and then they would give their final approval for it. And then once final approval was given, the pilot could add that claim to his, or I guess it was only his at that time, but their personal tab.
Right.
And say, oh, I've shot down 1 aircraft, or 5, or whatever the number is.
Right.
So while that's going on, then there's also the enemy side. Did they lose an aircraft? Yes or no?
Right.
And then after the war, you can compare 2 sets of records against each other. And on one side you have the claim, on the other side you have the loss. And if there's a match or a reasonable match, then you can be pretty certain that there was an actual a victory in that case. But many times there's no match.
Right.
And it's very interesting that a lot of pilots who hold world records in terms of how many aircraft they've claimed as shot down, their records or their legacy hinges on them being so successful in the air, in air combat. But in actuality, they didn't shoot down as many aircraft as they claimed.
Right.
This is not us saying that they falsified records on purpose. There's a million different reasons and ways why, or how you can explain why the records don't match up, theorize about it.
Yeah.
Only in very limited cases would I go to length saying that there's some kind of dishonest intent here, like somebody might have lied or fudged the numbers.
Right.
But in most cases where the claim and the loss don't match, it's usually due to the chaotic nature of combat.
Right.
They observed something differently from how it actually occurred.
Sure.
And they made the claim in good faith, right?
Sure.
They saw the enemy aircraft kind of peel away and go down. It was smoking.
Yeah.
But that aircraft actually returned back to base. It was repaired, and then the next day it took off. So there was no permanent kill or damage done.
Right. Or you just don't find the wreckage.
You don't.
Or you just don't find the wreckage.
Yeah.
Of a confirmed, or I guess there's a million things. So the significance, what's the, so you guys found that that the records didn't match up from what side?
In this particular case, we were looking at 8 German pilots.
Right.
And they would usually be fighting against the Soviets. On some days, because of the geographical position of Hungary, it could be attacked from Italy. The Allied Air Forces, either the 15th Air Force or the 205th Bomb Group from Britain, would come up and they would bomb various places in Hungary. From Italy.
Wow.
Or from the east, you would get the Russians,
sometimes
the Romanians and the Bulgarians, but mostly the Russians.
They had planes?
Yeah, they did.
That's awesome.
They did, yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah. They had a few. The Romanians are a funny bunch because they did an about face in the summer of 1944, and up till that point they were supplied either by domestically produced aircraft or by German aircraft.
Right.
And so when they flipped sides, they were using German aircraft against the Germans. Yeah. Wow. So that caused even more confusion. It's just this wild melee in the air.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. So we're mainly comparing German pilots to Soviet losses.
Right. Okay.
Which is a unique combination because the claims are pretty well established for the German side, but the losses on the Soviet side are not.
Sure.
It's still very much disputed on a grand scale for various factors.
I could see that being.
Yeah. And there's this tendency to kind of put down Soviet documentation for a host of reasons. Some of them I understand, but and these are some of the unserious objections to our research that have come up, which
from Russian enthusiasts.
No, it's actually a lot of the times, unfortunately, it's pro-German, I guess, Luftwaffe fanatics who really want, they really buy into this underdog theory, and they try to.
Damn,
it's pretty sad, and you have to tell them that the Germans lied too, buddy. It's
so your research proves to Luftwaffe, and I'm not saying that correctly. Luftwaffe, which is the bombers. Anyone who doesn't know,
it is German, the German Air Force.
The German Air Force. Okay, I thought it was just the bombers. So,
no.
And your research is saying the German records are not lining up with how many losses the Soviets say they have.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah. And it wouldn't make sense for the Soviets. But, okay, and keep going because you're probably going to answer my question anyway.
Yeah.
But
is it somehow related to the accuracy of Soviet records?
Well, I would just think it would be in the Soviet interest of maybe some lower down
to fudge the numbers.
To say, actually, we didn't lose that many.
Yes.
And they did.
Yeah.
And then the Soviet army is like, the spirit has not taken a hit in the Soviet army.
Yeah.
So it's like we're still strong, and it's actually we lost 12 planes.
Yeah.
But we're just gonna say 4.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
And then, but you're saying that your research debunked.
Very much so. Very much so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's a very common objection from people. I don't mean to sound arrogant, but people who are perhaps fresh to...
Go for it.
Or we're just going to tear into you.
I got no problem. I mean, this is your reputation of your writing.
Yeah. So it's commonly brought up without a fundamental understanding of how losses were recorded.
Right.
We can strip away all military aspects of this. We can even strip away the Soviets and just say that you work producing some kind of product.
Right.
You need to write invoices and orders to get more materials in order to build your product. Exactly. So it's actually in your interest to document accurately what your needs are.
Right.
And in this case, going back to the Soviets in military aviation history, their needs are to replenish their losses.
Yeah.
So it actually is in their interest to accurately document how many aircraft were lost, either due to enemy action or just simple mechanical failure, pilot error, whatever. Because if they don't have those aircraft coming in as resupply, then they can't post new missions in the future. And then that really hinders their military capabilities going forward.
Yeah.
And their inability to put forward missions, that's what the higher-ups really didn't like.
Right.
They really wanted this intensive, constant push on the enemy without stop.
Right.
And so to do that, you need to order new planes, call up new reserves from pilot training schools and all this stuff. So it's actually in their interest
for sure
properly document this.
Yeah.
And so we're not working with heavily, what's the term? Like documents that have gone through this cosmetic kind of altering to make the losses look not as severe as they actually are.
Right.
That's the style that a lot of people are exposed to because that's public facing.
Right.
That's the propaganda that the state would put forward.
Right.
But we're working with internal documents.
Right.
So
of course.
Inside the unit, not what the unit is publishing
to the people.
To the people or to higher ups is what they're using internally.
Right.
Now, to get that information is very, very difficult. That's why it hasn't really been done before.
Sure.
We have certain contacts that were able to get this for us.
Awesome.
Which is freaking amazing.
Yeah.
God bless them. Like they went through many hoops.
Wow.
But to see the internal documents was extremely special.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. And again, I'm not. I actually. It's funny. Even I catch myself saying like, "Oh, I would suspect this," and not that I shouldn't, or maybe I should. I don't have no idea. But it's interesting that I thought that. But I would think that very much on the German side as well. I would think it on all fronts.
On all fronts, you're right.
On all fronts, but I would, especially near the end of the war. I know it happened on the German front. That like they were for instance, like the Battle of the Bulge was like kind of uncalculated by a lot of the higher up German. Well, first off, it was insane that they did that. I mean, that was like the worst military. Like, yeah, okay, you got through, but
and then what?
And then the fog lifted, and then they got like the planes just shot them all down.
Exactly.
So it was kind of a last ditch effort by the Germans. But the numbers, like, you know what I mean, messing with the numbers, for sure happened on the German side near the end of the war, because if you were failing, you got like executed.
Exactly.
And then that type of fear mongering always creates like sort of an inflation in the in the system. So if the currency of the system is fear, then you're always going to have these lies, and then you're never going to have an accurate picture of like the reality. So it's interesting to me that these fanatics, I mean, that's crazy a little bit, that they're like critiquing your work by saying like, actually this. I mean, I don't know why it would be in their interest either to say like, no, they were
like
they were accurate. Like no, like why?
Yeah.
What does that make you look like? I don't know.
You want the bad guys to win? Like, come on.
It's it's like, yo, that's kind of. But okay, wow. So you found that the numbers that had been recorded by the Germans
weren't accurate. They were kind of inflated compared to reality. Again, why they were, that's a completely different question. Right. And we make this clear that because of the nature of the conflict, there's a lot of delicacy that needs to be exerted, because you get into the politics of it, and like you're going to get screamed at from all sides. So we don't try to get into that side. We just get into the facts of this is what document set A and document set B state. There is an agreement, or there is not an agreement, and we kind of leave it at that.
Right.
There is some extrapolation we do over the pilot's entire career based on our small sample size. So, but we make that clear as well. Like, based on this extrapolation, we could expect the person to be X% accurate over their 4-year service history.
Right.
Or however long they served.
Right.
But again, we say that that's an assumption. It's a calculation. It's not 100% accurate.
Yeah.
But there is some kind of foundation to those numbers. It's not just pulled out of thin air.
Right.
And we don't put our personal bias in it. We try to keep it as scientific as possible. The book does read like a case study, or actually a collection of case studies. There's 246 claims that we try to verify.
Wow.
So there's a fair bit, and it gets rather repetitive, but you get kind of accustomed to the
flow of it.
The flow of it. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. Cool. And so how many planes were? So how many? So 240.
246 was just a small sample. We looked at 8 pilots.
Right.
And just over the country of Hungary, these 8 pilots claimed about 246 aircraft.
Wow.
So it's a lot. So you can imagine that just 8 pilots claiming that many, there's bound to be some kind of discrepancy.
Yeah, some sus.
Exactly.
That each pilot got like 4. I don't even know what the math is there, but that seems suspicious. And you're saying, that
exactly. Yeah. So when you start to put these facts out, even the person who's not trained or hasn't been, I guess, like, this isn't their thing. Yeah. But they can still see that, okay, there's something doesn't add up.
Right. I mean, if you just told me that 8 pilots shot down 240 other pilots, and you were like, the 8 German pilots shot down 240 Soviet pilots, I'd be like, that's crazy, but also I know very little about, like, maybe the Germans were way more well trained. I would probably question the sources, but if they were real, I'd be like, all right, well,
exactly,
I guess so. But you guys are like, that doesn't make sense. So how many did they actually shoot down?
Less than 140.
Okay.
So we're looking at
still kind of unbelievable. 8 pilots?
Yeah. So these were some deadly warriors out there. Yeah.
So you looked at the 8 best pilots over the over Hungary.
Yes, for a period of from October till like March 1945. October 44, March 1945.
In 1 year.
So in about 6 months, yeah.
In 6 months, they shot down 140.
Yeah, just those
planes.
8 people. Yeah.
Jeepers.
Yeah, they were killers.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
So there is some. I mean, that's insane. So, were the Soviet pilots just really poorly trained? Were their planes crappy? What were the down? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Was it all dogfights, or was it
not all of it?
They were shooting down other.
It's a variety of factors. In the military, you have. I'm not in the military, by the way, but from what I've heard, is your ability to kind of operate independently is very limited.
Right.
So if they tell you to jump, your response should be how high. Exactly. So the Soviet doctrine of fighting the war in the air was very much tactical.
Mm-hmm.
On the Western Front, it's very much strategic. That's why you get the 8th Air Force in England. They're flying long-range bomber missions into Germany and then back. Mm-hmm. The Soviets, and those missions are like 6 to 8 hours apiece.
Yeah.
And they do one a day. The Soviets, they operate differently. It's very tactical. Their airfields are close to the front line. They're flying 4 to 6 missions a day, an hour apiece. So it's like physically borderline insanity.
Yeah, it'd be a lot. That'd be very demanding.
Very, very demanding.
Right.
So you get a lot of pilot fatigue.
Yeah.
You get a lot of abuse of alcohol to deal with that fatigue.
Sure.
And so you get people flying intoxicated on both sides. And there's many stories where they're just like, yeah, if I wasn't drunk and flying, I would not have acted that way because I was either extremely reckless or very aggressive.
Right.
But I completely neglected all like safety concern for myself.
Right.
And so you get a lot of rash actions. The tactics are very different. They're flying very low to the ground. We're talking between 0 and 4,000 meters, 4 kilometers.
Right.
And at that altitude range, almost any kind of firearm can reach you.
Right.
So, rifles and anti-aircraft, they can all reach you. And then there's planes in the sky that can shoot you down as well.
Top.
You're very exposed.
Being low like that makes very little sense to fly because if someone's above you, they can see you.
Yes.
They
and
come up behind you.
Exactly. And if your plane gets hit and you're going down, there's very little opportunity to correct the direction of the plane.
Yeah.
So you have a higher chance of crashing into the ground and dying. If you bail out because you're at such a low altitude,
right,
you're at risk of not being able to pull your parachute.
Yeah.
So you're just going to fall down.
So why did they do that? Like, that sounds dumb.
So their doctrine, the Soviet side, was you just have to
keep throwing.
Yep, keep throwing people at the front, like pound the front line, just grind them down. And so they were very effective at that. And it was very much focused on what's happening on the ground. Whereas the Germans, they also had this idea of we need to kind of get air supremacy.
Mm-hmm.
So they were also focused on the air.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why they were able to shoot down so many Soviet planes, is because the Soviets were so focused on what's happening on the ground.
Yeah.
The Germans could come in and see like, oh, we see you in the air, and then shoot them down.
Yeah. And then we see where you are on the ground.
Exactly.
And we're gonna not do that.
Yeah. And because the Soviet doctrine was very much tactical and ground focused.
Yeah.
And because they don't have that liberty to kind of do what they want, they're very much boxed in, and so they're forced to fight a certain way. It's kind of like in modern day warfare, you look back at like the trench is, or like 1800s where you get like 1,000 people lined up and another 1,000 people, and then you just shoot at each other.
Yeah.
It's like, why did we fight like that? It's so stupid.
Yeah. Well, all of it's wild to me.
But all of it is ridiculous and uncalled for.
It's kind of the fascinating part about it, to be honest. Like, I mean, not in like a weird way, but like it's like cheapers. Like,
like we actually did that.
The sheer
to
force
each other.
of it.
And it's wild. Yeah. And you have a lot of people that are very young. Like still in their teens, flying aircraft, military aircraft. so much to focus on.
Yeah.
Perhaps poor training.
Sure.
All this. And the Germans did have a head start in terms of training. So
Yes.
I wouldn't even say on average, but there's perhaps a tendency in specific units to have more experienced people flying their aircraft than what the Soviets had.
Mm-hmm.
So that's another factor.
Yeah.
During this time frame, October till March, there's a lot of bad weather. So weather is also a factor. There's a lot of factors, but
Right.
yeah, the losses are just like
Wow.
horrendous.
That's crazy. So how does this affect the country of Hungary? Like, does it affect Hungary? Like, Hungary was it a satellite country for?
It was one of the
Soviet-
satellite states in the Soviet
states,
era.
and then it was on the Axis side.
During the Second World
Right.
War.
Also, if any of this is sensitive, you don't want me to.
Oh,
okay,
no,
yeah.
go for it.
But how? And so how did? Well, first off, how did that come about?
Yeah. So
Hungary
that's,
is-
we would have to get kind of, like a lot of things in the Second World War,
Yeah.
you actually have to look at the First World War.
for sure. Okay.
And the way that conflict ended, it nearly guaranteed another continental conflict.
Yeah.
And for various reasons, I don't want to pretend I know why,
Right.
but it is said by many, many historians that it's like you set yourself up for a second war.
Right.
The Kingdom of Hungary lost about 2/3 of its land after the
Wow.
First World War.
Wow.
And so there was this drive and like want of the people to reclaim a lot of that territory.
Mm-hmm.
It's sort of akin like if Mr. Trump absorbs Canada and then
Yeah.
there's going to be this group of Canadians that are like, we want our independence back.
Yeah.
We're going
Right.
to fight for it.
Yeah.
Well, similar to back then, 2/3 of the country left.
Yeah.
And it's not even so much the land that is the big thing that affects you. It's
Yeah.
the loss of people.
Yeah.
Your
Right.
neighbor is suddenly of a different nationality.
Yeah.
Your neighbor didn't move, but
Yeah.
the people up in government, they drew a border
Yeah.
across
Right.
both of your properties, and
Yeah.
now they're on one side and you're on the other.
Right. Right.
And so this just like dividing up of the country, that did not sit well with them.
Yeah.
Economically, they were in a tough state.
Yeah.
And so they were looking for options how to regain what they had. And unfortunately, they had a leader who really wanted that. And he was more sympathetic to the Germans than some of the other countries. The Germans offered something that he wanted.
Mhm.
So they agreed to be on that side.
Mm-hmm.
And the rest is history.
Yeah. Well, the interesting thing about that type of thing, I mean, Germany was in charge as well prior to the Second World War. They had done a lot of legwork starting, like, there's evidence for the peace riots that were happening in England and other parts of the world. But those were organized by German infiltration. Yeah.
Wow.
And the same with the IRA in Ireland. A lot of Ireland was it's not that they were pro-Nazism or pro concentration camps. Like when we think of Germany, and I'm not like sympathetic to Germany necessarily. I mean, I'm sympathetic to all the countries. I'm not sympathetic to the countries. I'm sympathetic to the people.
Yeah.
A lot of the working class people that probably didn't really have. I mean, I'm not going to say they didn't have a choice, but like, I'm not going to sit here and look back and judge and all this stuff.
Yeah.
Now, there were some things. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
There were some things
They were
that
disgusting
you don't.
and vile.
Sure,
Yeah.
but I think everyone has got my point on that clear.
Yeah.
So, but Ireland, for instance, comes out of this war with England for however many centuries, and Germany's like, hey, yeah, you don't like England either? Well,
Copy our template.
yeah, come on, like, well, let's join. And so a lot of the IRA who were, Irish Republican Army, and I shouldn't say a lot of them, but there was infiltration there where they were, antagonizing in Britain. And they didn't see them as like, you guys are this and Germany as that. Like they were like, oh, sweet, here's an opportunity for us to get some independence back. And so I have no idea about Hungary or quite honestly a lot of that part of the world. But I do know that, you know, during or like just after Soviet state era, that's not a good time in a lot of those countries. Yeah. And Germany's like, yeah, we're we don't like them either. Yeah. And we're gonna supply you guys with a bunch of stuff. So let's do this together. And I think that was the same with Ukraine as well. And I think maybe not, but there was a lot of those countries that Germany was like, yeah, like you guys come on board, like let's do this together. Cause
they definitely found sympathetic supporters in very many areas of the world. Yeah. There was even a political party in the UK that was like pro-fascist. Yeah. Which is like, that's wild. Yeah, to me, for sure. Had that. But I guess in a democratic society, you have to endure such craziness. Sure. And so they were allowed to exist. Now they were very much boxed in, and they're like, you guys are wild. Like we're not going to let you do the stuff you want to do. Yeah. But yeah, they definitely found supporters in various countries and parliaments and stuff. The Hungary definitely got the short end of the stick. It lost twice. The First World War, it got divvied up, and then the Second World War was more so their fault. The first one, from our point of view, we kind of got lured into it because we were part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire.
Yeah, I was going to ask about that.
So then if like the Austrians we have this feeling that they pulled us into it. And then we kind of had to go. You would think that because both Austria and Hungary are in the title of Austrian-Hungarian Empire, that we were on equal footing. We weren't.
Interesting. So I just did assume that.
Okay, but no, we weren't.
Wow.
We didn't. No, we weren't.
So Austria and Hungary were two different empires, or two different like families.
Yeah. So I guess back then, again, I'm not an expert in this, but there was. Back in the day when you would have like kings and queens, and you would go based off a family tree. Yeah. And eventually you will get to a point where the king or the queen cannot bear any children of their own. Right. And then you have to figure out a different solution. Right. Hungary's solution was to bring in another royalty from a different country to maintain royalty status and perhaps grow their own areas. And so one of them was an Austrian person, and then they began to, they're going to sound very like top-down technical, but they began to outbreed. The Hungarian royal family took over the royal family, and then began to abuse their power, as all kings and queens do after a certain point in time. They get so accustomed to it, and they see like everyone as their subjects. Right. They get this god complex, and then they begin to abuse their power. So that started to take place. There was a big revolution in 1848. Wow. And then in order to kind of appease the Hungarian side, they gave a little bit more liberties back to the Hungarians. And you get a little bit more cooperation, but it wasn't like Hungary fully autonomous from the Austrians.
Right. And so the Austro-Hungarian Empire, and we don't spend too much more time, but this is fascinating. And how did that empire start to collaborate with the Soviet Union? Like when did the Soviet Union sort of make either Austria or Hungary? Because I don't think Austria was a satellite state, was it?
No, it wasn't. Actually, a little bit after the war, parts of Austria, like up to Vienna, a little bit west of Vienna, were still in Soviet control. Right. So I guess, what was their last conference? The Yalta Conference, where you had Churchill, Roosevelt. Maybe it wasn't Roosevelt. One of them died. One of the American ones. Anyway, the American president and Joseph Stalin, they came together and they were drawing lines over Europe. Like, you're going to get this portion, you'll get this portion.
Wild.
And that's why you get like a really strong Soviet push in Hungary, because Stalin wanted to gain more territory for his own. Right. Because it was a bargaining chip at the end of the war. They knew they were going to win. It was just, if I have taken over more territory, then I can use that as a chip going forward. Right. Similar to what's happening in Ukraine now, where they're taking over more land and they're using it as a bargaining chip for any eventual negotiations, if that ever takes place. Right. Different conflict, different story. So after the war, the line is kind of drawn, and Hungary's on the western border of the Soviet Union as a satellite state.
Yeah.
Parts of Austria were, and then that was taken over diplomatically by the western side.
Right.
And so those two countries bordered the democratic west and the socialist east.
Right. Wow.
And so that's how that kind of took place.
Okay. So that happened after the war.
The Second World War.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the timelines might need to be rearranged here. So
Yeah,
you had like the Hungarian kingdoms, Hungarian Empire, First World War, Trianon, which was the policy which broke apart Hungary.
Yeah.
Then you have like the little country of Hungary. You have the fascist rise in Germany, sways the Hungarian leader to join their side. We join the Hungarian state joins the German state in the Second World War. Right. Gains some territory from other countries.
Right.
So it kind of appeases the population in Hungary of like, okay, we're kind of getting what we were promised. This is good. We'll continue to be on your side.
Right.
They end up losing the war, Hungary along with the Germans, and then the country shrinks back to its post-Trianon borders, which is its current borders as of today.
Right. Okay.
Mostly, there's a few tweaks here and there.
Details. Right.
Yeah.
Wow.
So crazy. So if, and there's some countries that are even more wild in terms of borders changing. Czechoslovakia, Yugoslavia.
Yeah.
Like those, like the countries that we see now, Czech Republic, Slovakia, Croatia, Bosnia and Herzegovina. These places, these are like 30, 40-year-old countries.
Yeah.
They're brand new.
Yeah.
So if you talk to someone who's lived in Canada all their life, like it's a completely foreign concept of like borders changing.
Yeah.
And we're very used to borders being fixed.
Yeah.
Like this is it.
Yeah.
It's going to be like this forever.
Yeah.
No, it's not going to be like this forever.
Yeah.
Maybe for a period of time, the borders will stay the same.
Yeah.
Even Canada, like if we look at Canada, it changed as like European colonies emigrated here.
Mm-hmm.
And then I don't know if we had Alaska and then we sold it to the Russians, or whatever happened with Alaska, and then the Russians sold it to the States. Like there's border changes happening all the time.
Mm-hmm. It's a great point, and that's something weird that I had never really. When the climate that I grew up in, that we grew up in, not having, because what are you, a second generation? First generation. Yeah. So your understanding of what a country is very different than mine. Mm. And the weird thing is, I think of Canada as a very new country because it's only like 200 or 300 years old. Mm-hmm. Now, it's only 150 years old.
Yeah, a bit over
154. Yeah. And now prior to that, there was like a Canadianness about it. Like my mom's family is from Quebec, and so that's like 400 years old or 300 years old. But and like a lot of my family moved here then. Like Irish immigration, Quebec, and England. That's like the three genes. But the point is, it's like that seems very young compared to Italy, which is like Rome. You walk around, there's like Rome, which I'd love to get into. Italy,
absolutely.
But the weird thing is, then you have Trump, like 51st state. What do you think of that, Canada?
Yeah,
and everyone freaks.
Yeah,
and it's like, yeah, I do too, and I don't like the idea of losing my way of life here. I mean, I don't like losing it to our government either. Yeah, which is the bigger threat to me.
Yeah,
but also I don't like if a foreign country that, although I do like America, I don't like the idea of it just being like all of a sudden
imposed
things
upon
change.
You.
Yeah, things change without your like say a little bit.
Yeah,
and however, those countries in that region, like Eastern Europe, that their concept of nationalism or patriotism, I guess a better form of patriotism, is so different. Yeah. Like I think place would play a much bigger role, even though the borders are changing all the time. They're local. would be much more important to them. Whereas we're all kind of nationalist to some degree in Canada in a weird way.
Yeah, this idea of Canada. Like, what is Canada?
And I like Canada, but also I don't like it's like Peterborough. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Even Ontario. I've never been to Timmins. Like I don't, and I have some, I guess, I don't know what the word is, like duty to people from Ontario, because they serve me, I serve them. There's like a economic relationship. Yeah. There's also an identity for sure. You know, like I was in Nova Scotia. It's not that.
Okay.
I like it better, to be honest.
Oh, really?
Yeah, wow. I do. Ontario. It's better. Not better. Like there's a lot of great things about Nova Scotia, but just like it's comfortable to me. Maybe I don't know. The weather's better. It's just better. I don't know what to say. But no shade on anyone from the East Coast. I'm sure they think it's better. But anyway, it's just a funny idea, I guess.
Yeah.
We freaked as a country. We freaked.
Yeah.
The last election.
Yeah.
Because Trump was like, 51st state, and everyone was like, you can't do that.
Yeah.
And it was like, he could.
Yeah.
He could have done that.
That's the wild thing, where you take it for granted until someone actually does it.
Yeah.
And you're like,
oh, we're not secure.
Oh, shit. Like, this is real.
Yeah. Like, tariffs. And all of a sudden we were like, what?
Yeah.
It's like,
despite him, like, barking about it for his whole campaign trail.
Yeah.
And then, like, 7 months later, we realized, like, no, he was serious. He was serious about this. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, like my view on the 51st state thing is just, I don't think joining another country was going to solve the problems that this land experiences on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah.
I don't think, from an American point of view, they understand what a cluster mess this is.
Yeah.
In this country that we're still trying to figure out.
Right.
Like, you don't want this. We don't want it.
Like what?
Like all our baggage. The things, like border disputes, we have the English-French kind of back and forth going on, which the States doesn't really have.
Right.
We have between Indigenous peoples and non-Indigenous peoples, which the States doesn't really have, even though they do have Indigenous populations there.
Right.
And then just trying to figure out who we are, because the States is, 400-ish years old?
1776, I guess.
300 and some change?
Yeah.
Something like that. So we're much younger than them.
Yeah.
And then just to kind of keel over, roll over, and kind of give up, just because some person pulled the 51st state card out of their hat. Like, to me, that just seems grotesque and, like, weak if we do roll over for it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I can kind of understand why some people would be lured in to the promise of the 51st state.
Yeah.
Because they recognize the problems here, but perhaps they don't recognize the problems in the States.
Yeah, for sure.
How severe those are.
Yeah.
And I don't see any benefit to joining them. I see more benefit in correcting the problems here.
Yeah.
And maintaining Canada as Canada.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree with that. I think it's true. I think a lot of the problems in Canada are
self-inflicted.
Well, they were only created in the last 10 years, in my opinion.
They're self-inflicted.
I mean,
it's pathetic.
It's weird that Quebec, like the French representation in Canada, like just Quebec, it's just the rest of the country. Like New Brunswick is bilingual, or not bilingual, like dual, like Quebec French, not Quebec, but like French francophone and English speaking, and those are the cultures, and they get along.
Yeah.
Same with Northern Ontario, and same with Manitoba.
Yeah.
And it goes along. It's not like the English is dominant, and if they are, like, it's not like I'm pro England in saying this, but like they won, like the Plains of Abraham. They won that battle, and that's like that's the history there. But, and then the Indigenous, like, topic, that was kind of fired. Like Trudeau kind of got that all stirred up again. Like I don't think they found any bodies in the Kamloops grave.
To my knowledge,
they've-
there was no excavation done.
Right.
There's a lot of back and forth about what could be in the ground.
Right. Yeah.
One side says that there's a bunch of people in the ground. The
Yeah.
other side says that those are not people. I've heard theories of it's actually when you do metal detecting, you don't know what's in the ground. You just get a signal from your machine.
Right.
From personal experience, when
Yeah.
you go metal detecting, you can set it to different frequencies. So if
Right.
we're looking for aluminum for aircraft,
Yeah.
we set it to a frequency that will detect aluminum.
Right.
But it doesn't mean you'll always find aluminum.
Right.
It's just whatever it captures in that frequency tends to be aluminum.
Yeah.
So I've heard theories of it's not bodies in the ground, it's an old orchard.
Sure.
And the ways the trees were lined up, it looks like people were laid in the ground.
Yeah.
And the frequency, when you go over it with the metal detector, is kind of the same.
Right.
I don't know the mathematics or the science behind it.
Yeah.
That one seems a bit like out there for me.
Sure.
But like working with a metal detector, I know that frequencies don't guarantee that what you're looking for is in the ground. It's just something that's getting picked up within
Yeah.
that range. Until you dig it up,
Yeah.
it's a big question mark.
Sure.
So I would like to see, with full respect,
Yeah, absolutely.
an excavation,
Absolutely.
which hasn't been done yet. Because if those indigenous children are in the ground, they deserve a proper burial.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that, in my mind, I'm like, let's show them the proper respect
Yeah.
for it. I think it's been used as a political tool.
Yeah. Very much so.
I've been out west. I've done missions in Kelowna, and I've seen the remnants of burnt down churches.
Yeah.
And I'm like, man, like, you can't correct a wrong with another wrong. Like, that's not how you grow community cohesion.
Yeah. Definitely.
Like, you need peace on this earth. We need a lot of peace, not just in Canada, globally.
Yeah.
So to me, that whole issue is like was, and will be a hot topic until we have actual like progress in it. And
Yeah.
we have to move away from theory and start do something about it.
Definitely.
And I think the opposing side, I would think, they want the exact same thing. Like, talk is cheap. Do something.
Yeah.
Like, to me, it's ridiculous. We live in the country that has perhaps the most natural resources on the planet.
Mm-hmm.
And there's communities in Ontario without fresh drinking water.
Yeah. I think everyone kind of thinks that that's like a bad thing.
Yeah.
You
Like,
know
fresh
what I mean?
drinking water should be like the minimum of minimums
Yeah.
in 2025.
Yeah.
And we're struggling to do that.
Yeah. No, for sure.
It's ridiculous.
But the worst part, I just have like two things to say on that.
Mm-hmm.
Trudeau mobilized everybody, and it wasn't even Native people who were burning down the churches, I don't think. It was just like basically Antifa in Canada. Like, I don't think
Canada
there was a
style.
lot. Yeah, Canada style. And again, like, maybe few and far between. Maybe it was. But from the research I did, there was just a lot of like, okay, yeah, we're going to burn down churches now because the Catholic Church did all this stuff, which I'm sure there was abuse. I'm not defending if there was abuse or not, but let's not start spreading calamity against something without actually knowing what it is, especially not as a prime minister. Like, that seems very much out of line. And then, in my mind, the worst colonization is still happening. Like, the fastest, and they did it to a few people, but they did it to the black community in the States. They destroyed the family. Like, the black community was actually pretty strong in like the 1950s and 1960s.
Despite all their persecution.
Despite all that, the family and the communities and the culture was actually like strong. They brought in welfare, and it replaced the role of the father in families. So now families no longer had to sort of come together and live this way. And we've done the same thing to our Native communities in Canada. They turn 18, we give them $20,000. They don't have to work. There's no virtue. There's no response to a normal life in society. And it's like, and you can be like, oh well, it's their land. It's like, so like that just means that they don't get to partake in the life that their land is that they live in, their life that they what am I trying to say here? They live in a place and they can't do anything really. Everything is just given to them. Nothing has meaning when everything is free like that, and you rob virtue from people and you rob opportunity, because you don't discover who you are just by having things sort of provided to you in this way. It's not even like they're nice things. It's like just enough to sort of steal that relationship
Tax
with
reduction,
economy.
for example.
Yeah,
Right?
sure. Tax reduction, which is like one of the things, but then I mean, literally everything. It's just you don't partake in reality, I think, in a big way.
You don't partake in like the overall or the larger community.
Yeah,
And it's a crying shame because it instills this divide.
Yeah.
And like, what was their? They have this flag. Is it like the wampum belt? It's like a purple flag with various white symbols, but it's meant to represent. Like, I'm probably butchering this, but like togetherness and like cohesion and working. The whites with the indigenous people.
Right.
Again, this was done way back when. But then, like, where's our modern version of the wampum belt?
Yeah.
Where's that cohesion? I don't see it.
Yeah. Well, what's funny is you actually do see it if you go to communities like, I don't know, like there's the Hiawatha and Atanabe.
Yeah.
And all the kids know each other.
Okay.
And everyone knows each other and gets along. You know what I mean? So it actually happens. Okay. But that's not shown. Okay. Politically, what you're talking about is true. Okay. You know what I mean? Just to step in for like, I agree with you. That in the media, that doesn't exist. Yeah. It's dominant culture and subdominant culture being stepped on. You know what I mean? That's what we're told. Yeah. And then, but you actually like go to the communities and like people like get along. Like Curve Lake and Lakefield and Buckhorn. Yeah. Like I don't think there's like animosity there. Okay. You know what I mean? I don't know. Yeah. But I agree with you. In the media, it's like,
the media would have you believe that it's like it's us versus them type of deal.
Yeah, it's in warfare. Yeah. Like. Yeah, which is pretty racist.
It totally is. Yeah, it totally is.
Which promotes racism.
Yeah, like racial divide and all this. It's just crap. Yeah. Like, some days you wake up and you're like, Jesus Christ, I need your second coming like today because I can't deal with this. This is so. It's pushed so aggressively, and there's political undertone to it. Yeah. Like if it was pushed aggressively because there's an actual imminent issue, and like it's extremely serious, I could understand. But there's always like a political undertone
for sure.
Man, like, just stop.
Weaponized, weaponized
exactly.
For a political party, which we still are again. But, But anyway, I don't want to take you down a
rabbit hole I can't get out
of. I agree with all of this, and I 100%. But it.
If I may interject,
you go for it. Yeah.
More things about the 51st state.
Yes. Yeah.
Like things that don't make sense to me. Partly because like there's a large Hungarian part of me. About the history, the culture, the language, family, all this stuff. I've been there numerous times, but it's a small country. You could fit it in. Maybe not Lake Ontario, maybe 2 Lake Ontarios. Right. Like it's not a large geographical country. And then you come back to Canada and you fly over this landmass for 5 hours and you're in the same country and you land in Vancouver. And you're like, man, I didn't leave the country. I was here the entire time. And Vancouver is very different to Ontario, as Nova Scotia is very different to Ontario. Yeah. And sometimes I get this feeling of, is the landmass a blockade for us getting along? Like, is the country geographically just too big? Is it too big to handle? Not population, because there's like, what, 40 million of us?
Something like that, yeah.
But we're so dispersed, and you get these like local groups. And how's that local group going to measure up against something like Toronto. Like, it's just impossible. And all the power, the money, the influence, it all funnels into these more built up areas. And you get like Timmins or places up north that kind of are left by the wayside.
Yeah.
And I'm like, is it a benefit to this country for it to be so big?
Yeah.
I don't know. I kind of question that. But joining to the States would only make it even bigger. Like that's not a solution.
Yeah. Yeah.
And like Mr. Trump's whole spiel of, we need Canada for our security.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, but who do you want security against?
Yeah.
Well, the Russians. Okay, but Canada borders Russia. So if you absorb Canada, now 51 states, big US, would border Russia. How is that more secure for you?
Yeah.
It doesn't. It makes more sense to have this thing called Canada act as a buffer between you and your foe. Canada would not vote the way I think he wants.
Yeah.
So politically it would make no sense.
I was thinking that as well, yeah.
Like, to me, the whole idea just makes no sense.
Yeah. I think if Canada was 51st state, the people in Canada would, I mean, we just saw, they went with Carney
the opposite
over.
direction.
Yeah, so I don't see how that would have worked in his favor. I think it was all a ploy to apply pressure to the Canadian government to say, like, yeah, listen, like, you guys, we're going to start making some demands here. Like, essentially, Trump got what he wanted. Kind of, I don't know, like, he really has, I think, the Canadian government under his thumb in a lot of ways.
A lot of ways.
Yeah. And
like, he didn't openly endorse, but he said he would get along better with Carney.
Yeah. Which is, and then everyone was like, we need Carney to defend us against Trump.
Yeah, so it was like this weird, like...
Whatever that is.
This is bizarre.
Yeah. So, but I agree with you, Dan. I think that subsidiarity, like smaller, more, like the provinces should have more, like, authority. There should be more provincial authority. I wouldn't mind even Republic of Canada, like Manitoba, Saskatchewan, Alberta, West splits. Quebec's been talking about leaving for years, and like, they should. I think that's the bloc. That's like the official.
That's what they
bloc
want.
parties.
To my knowledge, like, they want to separate.
Yeah, which I have no problem with.
Like,
I actually have no problem.
Give
with
it
that.
to them if they want to separate.
Yeah, I actually have no problem with it. I don't know what this demand for, like, a younger me would have been, kind of more in the camp of like the nation and.
Yeah. When you're young, you look at a map and you're so accustomed to seeing a particular shape on a map.
Yeah.
And we're stuck at that level.
Yeah.
It's like, no, a nation is not, it is in part its geographical borders, but it's people.
Yeah.
That's what is important.
Yeah.
When we go back to the history of Hungary, you lost 2/3 of your land. It's horrible. But what's worse is losing 2/3 of your people.
Yeah.
That one really hits home.
Yeah. That's crazy.
So it's wild.
Yeah.
So we need to get away from looking at a map and saying, I want the borders to look a certain way.
Yeah.
We need to get away. I'm not for open borders, by the way.
Yeah.
Don't get me
No.
wrong. Borders are there to be defended.
Yeah.
And they're for the control of people going to and from a country.
Yeah, for sure.
Like, maintain those. But we don't get used to the border staying the same all the time, and don't look at a country as only its border.
Yeah, right. No, I completely agree. And it's weird that we, like, Italy is, just to tuck into Italy real quick.
Yeah.
But it's really probably my favorite country.
Okay.
Just for a number of reasons. I have many favorite countries. I've never been to a country I didn't really like, to be honest with you. But Italy, the relationship with the land was very important. Like, the culture in my mind is how you relate to the land. And then that will transfer to the relationship you have with your neighbors. And if you start to foster those two things, you have good culture.
Yeah.
And Italy does that so well. Like, there's a reason Assisi or these places are so beautiful. And it's because they perfectly have the houses look and are derived from the land directly. And the flow of life is so impacted by the landscape.
Mm-hmm.
And then the people discuss these ideas that are shaped by the landscape. And that relationship there is very much, I think, kind of one of like God's creation, and then we relate to the creation. It's very harmonious.
Yeah.
The natural law relation. So that to me is what creates like a beautiful culture. And Italy just does that really well.
Yeah.
And then when you start to, if you look at Canada as like these borders, that's where, I mean, Germany, you could say Germany went wrong in a lot of places, but it was interesting that they had this like German culture, which is actually a very beautiful culture, like old Germanic culture, even new Germanic culture, very beautiful in a lot of ways. But then when it goes to nationalism and it's no longer like patriotic and like love for place, all of a sudden you have this divorce from your place, and it's about like border and probably a lot about resources and stuff like that. And it, I don't know, it just becomes very utilitarian in a sense, or
it's a good word for it.
I don't know.
Very utilitarian. You view it as something to be fully exploited.
Yeah.
And
rather than loved, kind of. And yeah.
And you view it as like there's always that lens of you're better than the other.
Yeah.
Which I don't know about that one.
Yeah, it gets dicey.
It gets very dicey,
It's
right?
dicey.
Yeah. But again, like going back to Italy, like Italy was a bunch of kingdoms.
Yeah.
Like we're used to seeing Italy as the boot in the middle of the Mediterranean.
Yeah.
With like the Vatican and Rome, and then there's another one that I forget, a bit higher up, the boot. But mostly like one big state. Back in the day, it was like a bunch of little kingdoms.
For sure. Yeah.
And it was wild.
Yeah. And it's not that old that Italy as a country.
As a country, no, it's not that old.
It's 100 and some years old.
Yeah,
so.
yeah. Even though the history goes back to like forever, it's amazing.
Yeah, the Mediterranean.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Yeah. So I was there maybe 3 weeks ago now.
Yeah.
And I did go to Rome. I went to Assisi. I went to Florence. Each town could almost be its own state.
Yeah.
So it was like the states you have to imagine were really small.
Yeah.
It was like municipalities almost.
Yeah.
Or counties.
Yeah.
And like that was your own almost like country.
Yeah.
Like very, very small.
Yeah.
But it instilled this deep sense of community within those small boundaries. And so you get a lot of like, how do you stitch this together? Like municipal patriotism type deal. Like I'm very much for the county of Peterborough. I'm very much for Kawartha Lakes or Durham region or Peel or Grey County or whatever.
Yeah.
And the style of architecture begins to develop specific to your location.
Yeah.
Utilizing the geographical landscape, the materials that you can build out of.
Yeah.
Your art develops that way. Your language, your slang develops.
Yeah.
Which is very beautiful. So, like, it's ever varying when you travel through Italy. And it's, to my eyes, almost all beautiful.
Yeah.
It's a gorgeous country.
Yeah, it really is. And it's also how, again, not to just be like rah Catholic, but the culture growing out of Catholicism, just there's like a harmony to it. It's very rich that way.
Yeah.
Like I think anyway, the religion just interacting with the place and the people, and you go there. I've never heard anyone say a bad word about going there. I don't know. It's I don't know. There's like the art and just all of it. So anyway, hopefully we kind of, I don't know. I don't think we'll get. I mean, I'm just looking at the window now at our the neighborhood we're in, but. Yeah, I don't.
You're not going to see Roman columns here anytime soon, do you?
But you know, when I was in Nova Scotia, I missed the heritage of Ontario.
Oh, really?
I missed it very much.
Was their architecture different?
No, I mean, yeah, but like the houses were different, I guess. But there was here the small farms are still
a thing,
active, and there's like small dairy farms or not dairy, but like beef farms.
Yeah,
and these fence rows and everything, and I think at one point they kind of had that, and Nova Scotia has it, but Cape Breton, a lot of it had grown over.
Okay.
And
as in, it's no longer farmland?
Yeah, it just became forest again.
Oh.
And all the trees took over. If they had ever been farms, they were not anymore. They were grown over. And it was almost wild again. Yeah. Like it had almost gone back to, and I missed it. I was like, there's like a heritage in Ontario that I like did miss. I was like, wow, like, this is.
We use the land. We don't abuse it.
Yeah. Yeah. And they used to, but it had just overgrown, and just in certain parts. If you're in Nova Scotia, don't.
We're not trying
I loved it.
Crap on you.
I loved it, but there was something about even you do think, because I'll start to get that way about kind of the area I'm in. I'm like, it's all modern builds and cheap and everything. It's like, some of it, but also there's a lot that you do kind of overlook. But
and it's. I guess practicality is the bridge between like full-on beauty and then homelessness.
Yeah.
Like we do have a homelessness or a housing crisis in Ontario and in Canada, and Peterborough houses like Peterborough for sure. And this is kind of like a very good bridge and a compromise between it. Like, you have a roof over your head, and it's decent looking. For the viewers, we have 2-story square houses. The bottom floor is brick. And the top floor is plastic siding with like shingles on the roof. So it's nothing spectacular.
They're not spectacular, but Dan, that house is probably $900,000, which is insane
relative to what you see. It's skewed
for sure. I mean, the materials alone probably costed like
100, maybe 2 million.
Yeah,
that's it.
Not even. Yeah, like who knows? I mean, it's like 3 pallets of bricks, and it's like, you know what I mean? It's like it almost, I don't know. But your overall point was that if it wasn't this, then it might just be nothing. But I don't know, like that. It's not from the like the utility. Yeah, I don't know. It's a big conversation to get into. Yeah, it's a big conversation. Yeah.
But like, I want to go for it. Like, it's an amazing conversation.
Yeah, okay.
Every time I come back from Europe, be whatever country that I explored, I get this sense of, but why don't we do this here? We have the space. Space is not an issue.
Not a problem.
We have the money.
Yeah.
Or we have the money.
Right.
Not really an issue.
Right.
We have the talent. Talent's not an issue. We have the time.
Yeah.
Time's not the issue. And we have the problem that needs to be fixed. So like there's a reason to do it. And yet we don't. We lack like beautification.
Yeah.
It's very much, is it good enough to work? Yes.
Yeah. Slap
Just
it together.
leave it at that.
Yeah. Well,
maybe put some finishing touches here and there.
Yeah. I mean, like if I'm just looking at these houses, I keep cutting you off. You have any?
Go for it.
Okay.
Go for it.
Sometimes I read people well, and sometimes I don't. I'm aware of the. I'll just jump in. But the problem, in my mind, is like you visit those countries and they didn't have any codes. There was no building codes. There was none of this. You could just design
building bylaw.
Yeah, and it's like to some degree, I guess codes like you don't want someone to be like, yeah, I can build you a house, and then they do, and it falls on you and kills you. So there should be some, I guess, degree of, you have to have maybe like an structural inspection.
Yeah.
I don't even like that. I think it should just be a design thing that you look at and you're like, okay. I don't know how it would work. I don't want to get into that. But if it was like, oh yeah, I've got $200,000, I'll pay you $100,000 to build me a house on this property with $100,000 worth of materials. Here's how I designed it. I know I can afford it because I was gonna design a bigger house, but I can't afford a bigger house. But I can afford this smaller house. Can you build me this? Yeah, no problem. I can do that. Then I have designed to my specific needs. It's like the way I organize my room is different than you and everyone else. You know what I mean? Yeah. So the style, even the style of clothes, it should be a style of house. Like people, as to how many people there are who live in a home, there should be that many styles of homes. Yeah, there's some crossover, but this idea that all of a sudden, no, it wouldn't be up to code. It would be dangerous. It would bring property value down. It would, et cetera, et cetera.
I think property value is a big one.
For sure. But also, it would be in people's interest to have beautiful places.
Mm-hmm.
And the only reason property value is even a discussion in my mind is because you have people trying to be put into houses that they don't feel they like for instance, a lot of these houses, they're going to be ghettos in like 30 years. Like even our house, the drywall is chipping, everything, like the property value has gone down since we moved into it, for sure. It's like not really, but property value is like an interesting thing because it still kind of plays into that topic of like, well, I want to have a house that like the investment all of a sudden I can resell. Like you start to get away from how it's personalized, and you start to monetize it in this other way. And that's fine. You can do that. You can resell your house. You should be allowed to do that. But that's where property value starts to take like primacy. I don't know. I think you start to get away from like there's proper utility of things, which is like, it serves my needs perfectly.
Yeah.
In like even a beautiful way. Like your architecture calls you higher.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so
a lot of this is driven by property value.
Yeah.
And it's like sometimes they're purchased with the explicit intent of to be sold in like 5 years, or just have some renters pay down their mortgage, and when it approaches the end of the mortgage, then you take it back. And but it lacks the sense of the personal. You know?
Definitely. Yeah.
It's very like impersonal.
Yeah.
Sad.
Yeah.
They there's room for improvement. Let's put it like that.
Definitely. And it's part of the socialism that Canada has fallen into, in my mind, are these codes, these bylaws, these codes that your house needs to be a certain. You can't build a house under a certain amount of square footage anymore, which is insane. It's like you can't.
What if you're a single person and you need 400 square feet? That's it.
Yeah. No, you got to rent. You got to rent, and the problem, because you start to fit people into a culture that you create.
Yeah.
This is top-down cookie cutter culture. Yeah. And we're living it. Like, we're renting from this place. We do it. And it's like, and it sounds extreme. Like, in all reality, we have a nice house. We have a roof over our heads. We have a few neighbors. We don't really talk to them that much, you know. But the reality of what it could be, you could purchase some land. Maybe it's more expensive because it's closer to some nicer property or, you know, waterfront, something like that. Okay, but if you can afford it, then that's what you get. You work harder, you afford that, or I don't know, however that works. You inherited, whoever. Yeah. But then, I bought the material. I don't know. It just starts to get. This to me is a direct response of the socialism that Canada has started to fall into, and it becomes this self-fulfilling prophecy because now everyone lives in the same house. To be honest, these are all the same houses with the same material and the same design, and then people are dehumanized a little bit in that process, and then the culture is very consistent, and so then that consistency of culture rejects out of the box thinking or action. Like if you were to build one house that was totally distinct here, it probably wouldn't go over well. It would stand out.
For the listeners, the 4 houses I see, they're all 2-story. If you went as radical as having a single-story house, like that would be a massive change.
Probably.
As simple as that. Just like
a
single house that's 1 story.
And probably no one would care that much even, but it's just funny that you like
for the lack of for the sake of standardization, it needs to be the same.
And I don't even think you can build a 1-story house in a neighborhood like this. I'm pretty sure the codes
are coded for a particular class. Like the builder might say, okay, we purchased 300 units and we're all going to build. They approve the plans through city council and all this.
Yeah.
That I understand, and the builder wants to make money, and that's their right to do it as well.
Yeah, don't you work in this department?
I work
Wait
for
a second. What is your work?
in a
Not this
municipal
department,
setting. No,
but
I work for corporate assets.
Walk me through what that. What is your job? Anyway?
What is
You don't have to get into that.
You know, I ask myself that a lot. What
No,
is
no.
my job?
No, I remember it being really cool, like a really good thing, but I just
Yeah, corporate assets.
you probably know a lot more about this than me.
Perhaps.
Okay.
Trying to remain humble too.
Man, spill-
All right, yeah, corporate assets. We basically track and report on all the assets that the municipality owns, and we help various departments create their capital budgets. So anything capital related,
Right.
we assist in that. Be that budgets, be that grants, be that projects that we get forced to do by the province or
Right.
federally, that kind of stuff. So like the planning department would be more refined in all the different codes and bylaws and subdivision stuff.
Mm-hmm.
What are they called? Subdivision assumptions.
Right. Wow.
When they get assumed by the municipality, because
Right.
the builder will build it, and then at some point when it passes through all inspection and it's up to code, then the municipality would take it over from the developer.
Right.
But there's at the beginning when there's a greenfield project, it's just literally a green field,
Right.
and then the developer says we want to turn the cornfield into a subdivision for 70 units.
Right.
Or whatever. Then there's this like the design phase, and then that's agreed to by both parties, municipal and developer.
Right.
Developer builds it. If it's up to code, then it's assumed by the municipality. And so there's this agreement of it should look like this.
Right.
So not all of the architectural and creative freedom lies with the developer, because there's certain codes that the municipality also wants.
Right.
So they are not free to build whatever they want.
Yeah.
And they also want to build something that the municipality will be inclined and encouraged to take over.
Right.
So that kind of lowers even further the creativity that they can operate under.
Mm-hmm.
But then the municipal side also is limited because the developer wants to build in a certain way where they can maximize their own profits.
Right.
And so beyond those codes and bylaws that the municipality creates, the developer has its own structure of codes to lower costs
Yeah.
and to maximize profits.
Cheapers. Wow.
And so you end up with something like this where,
Right.
to be frank, it is nice. But when you come back from a place like Italy, you're like, oh man, like they took this from us, Hugh. They took this beauty from us.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then this is the end result. These square houses with your... It's just filled with compromise. You're getting 2 stories and a basement, but it's not large enough for a big family to live in.
Right.
You get brick, but it's like, you know, it looks like it was 2 different types of brick put together.
Yeah.
It's probably going to need a lot of repairs in 10 years. Like, this is the end result.
Yeah.
Cookie cutter.
Yeah. My opinion of the house itself is out in a farm field somewhere as a standalone house. It would be fine. It would be nice, you know. They are comfortable. They are big. They're big, but they make them big so that they sell for a certain value.
Yeah.
So these houses, I'm not even kidding, they're going for like $700,000 to $900,000, and it's like we watched that get slapped together in like 4 days. It was like crazy, and then the brick came on in like 2 days, and then the windows. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The roof, and so it's like. It's very interesting to me that is the narrative that drives them to be a certain shape. So they are made cheap so that the builders can collect more profit, but they're also made big so that they can sell for expensive so that the municipality has high property value.
Yeah.
And that's very crazy to me because these are, like, honestly, most of the people are renting on our street. And then the owners own like 3 of them. I think they live in Toronto or Vancouver. And you just have these weird cultural spaces now.
Yeah.
And then you get these people who don't really care about, like, even the yards aren't even.
There's no fences for the
There's
viewer.
no fences. Yeah.
Like, where does Hughes' lot end?
Yeah.
And where does the neighbor's lot
There
begin?
is actually a little ditch, but
Okay.
there's a little, yeah. But no, it's true. It's just these funny spaces though, where everyone's kind of like detached from their place. This is my home, but like I'm so don't care about this place compared to my mom and dad's house.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's like.
Would you
really-
consider that like home?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
Like this is. I honestly kind of like being here more.
Okay.
Just for some reason, you know, in some contexts, like it's a lot easier to live here, who I am in this place, in this stage of life. But like, if it was like, oh, you have to tear down one, like, yeah, no
This one's
question.
going.
No question. You know what I mean?
And do
so
you
it's
say
fun.
that because you grew up in that house?
It could be. It could be. I also just think it's a nicer house.
Nicer house.
I don't know if you've been to my house,
course,
my mom and
yeah.
dad's house.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's run down like crazy.
Yeah.
But also, it has this house will never last as long as that one did. You know, it's like 100 and some years old, and you know it.
It lets you know.
You feel it, especially in the winter. You know it. But at the same time, the design fits much more culturally vibrant lifestyle of family. The dining room, the kitchen, the living room, the houses, like the rooms, the doors, they're much more designed for a family.
Yeah.
And not that these houses aren't either, but they're designed for a certain type of
Yeah. When I come into houses like this, like it screams of, I don't want to trash.
Yeah, go.
Right, but it just screams of compromise because the builder wants you to have a bit of everything.
Yeah.
But then you didn't get the full experience of a proper dining room, of a proper like entertainment space.
Yeah.
Like, again, this is extremely common where the kitchen, the dining room, and the entertainment space is all one open concept.
Yeah.
And it's like, what if you're cooking fish and it starts to smell, and now your guests have to be, endure the smell of fish?
For sure, yeah.
Like, separate them, give them their own space.
Yeah.
But they ought not to do that. Or they have like just the way that they're designed. They're also more, while they are square in nature, they tend to be more rectangular, and they stretch like further back. So you don't have a lot of frontage in order to put more houses on the street.
Yeah.
So you get staircases that are very tight, and they rise aggressively.
Yeah.
Same in the basement. They drop down aggressively. Like, think about yourself 40 years from now.
Yeah.
You want to live in a house like this? Like, how are you going to go up and down? You can't.
The reality is they knew exactly who was going to buy them. One or two investors who bought 4 of the same house and rented it out to college, and you know what I mean? To people. Like, these houses are perfectly designed for people to rent in.
Yeah.
That's what this house was designed for. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And they knew that. There's no mistake there, in my opinion.
They did a good job in knowing the buyer base.
Yes.
Yeah. Like, this would not be AODA compliant for like elderly people. Like, you're not going up those stairs.
100%.
Unless you get hoisted up or something.
Or for a single person even. This is not a single person's house.
Oh, it's massive.
It's massive for a single person. It's also not a family of 5. So, okay it might be a family of 3 or 2. That you or a couple. A couple could buy it for sure. But more likely, they were like, Peterborough has a high rent demand. Like, and now this might not be like all it has. This is a bit of me just being a conspiracy theorist, but for sure, I think the majority of people living in this neighborhood, I don't know how to say majority. There's a lot of renters. A lot. and a lot of college and university kids.
Absolutely.
And
just the simple fact that there's no fences. If I would have children here, right? Like I would want a fence for their own protection.
Yeah.
What if the neighbor has a dog? Like the dog's gonna shit on your lawn? Like no, put a fence up.
And I think I don't know actually. I don't think they are. I think you have to put your own up. But it's true. Like there's just it's very funny that I don't know. This is the design of. This is where we're at.
Yeah.
In Ontario, this is where we're at for people to live.
Yeah.
And I have. In one sense, I live in a mansion. It's true, and I'm very grateful for it. I'm not. But in another sense, when you come away from Italy with just everything you interact with, reminding you that you're significant, and like an important creature, and then you come to this, and it's like
there's contrast.
Yeah, you stare at drywall. All day, you know what I mean? It's just a weird thing. Like it's just a weird thing. So anyway, I don't know. But yeah, that's just me.
Yeah.
I'm big on architecture. I'm big on architecture.
Well, how can you not be? Especially in a place like Rome.
Yeah.
Where it's like, man, it's incredible.
Yeah. It breathes life in you.
It does.
Yeah.
It does. Yeah. And a lot of it is religious architecture, churches, the Vatican,
for sure.
This kind of stuff. But even the non-religious architecture, like the Roman Forum, or Roman aqueducts, or
just even the roads, man.
Italian Parliament, some of the roads, like it's incredible.
Yeah, no, it just
we in Canada, speaking about roads, there's no reason why we need so much space for our roads. There's no it's incredible the amount of I should know this because I work in this space, but the land needed for a road. Whatever that's called. There's the road and then there's the land on either side and the land that the road is on. Like that needs to be so large. And it's like, why? You go to, I was in the UK a couple times and you take some of their back roads and it's literally like there's the road, there's no shoulder, and then it's just hedges. And they're like, the road needs to be 2.2 meters. I guess did they use feet in the UK?
I think meters.
Meters? Okay, let's call it 2.2 meters. And that's it? That's enough for a truck or a car? And we're not building anymore. And like that's like the extreme. But compared to what we have, where you have so much extra space on the side of the road, that's the other end of the horse. We're falling off the other end. Where like you could have built something amazing there and you just gave it to the road.
No, the cities are they become car or vehicle dominant instead of people dominant,
and it's so like there's parts of downtown Toronto, even I guess like parts of Hunter Street in Peterborough that are more pedestrian friendly, but it pales into comparison to some places in Europe. Now I understand that Europe has like 1,000 years head start. It is different, and they didn't have codes necessarily when they built those things, and it kind of evolved from it. And I'm like, but we started from scratch. We could have taken their best, and that's our starting point.
Definitely.
Why do we not do that?
I can't tell you now. I can't answer it. I can't answer it. But I bet you the automobile people were in cahoots with the government for sure.
Probably.
I mean, I'm gonna
we need roadways everywhere.
And you're gonna make cities car and vehicle dominant so that people can't get around unless they have cars and vehicles. And I don't know. I mean, I would guess that that's the case. It's convenient. I have a car. Everyone has a car. It's convenient. But I agree with you. It becomes removed again from the place.
Very much so.
A little bit. So.
But to me, I'm like, I would agree with that approach. But then I see that Europe has cars too.
Yeah,
but the car's not the issue.
Yeah, but they also, all their cities formed before the vehicles. So the vehicles had to try and fit in with the architecture already existing.
But is that not the logical progression of the human comes first and you build around the human?
Yeah, not when you have the human and the automobile coming at the same time to a place like Ontario or Alberta, and like at the same time, I mean, we didn't have cars, and no one had vehicles in Ontario. But also the cities, I don't think were that old, and they were like, okay, So that part can be human, but the rest of this, like how are we? I don't know. I just think that roads became a way bigger, like how quickly we made a city in our modern time compared to how thousands of years, not thousands, hundreds of years,
to develop from a village to a town to a city.
Yeah, and then like in Rome, it's like there's roads, but also they're barely eked into the architecture. Whereas
it's a compromise there too.
Yeah, it is. Mm-hmm. It is, but it's a lot more. You're closer to like a reality that you're like, oh, this fits better. Mm-hmm. You're like, because if you're walking, I don't know. But I'm coming across like a real know-it-all right now. These are just totally me guessing. So I don't want to get on that. Well, so Hungary. Back to Hungary.
Okay.
Where's it at now? Because I hear that the Hungarian president,
we have both actually.
Oh, okay. What?
Yeah.
Okay.
We have a president and a prime minister.
Who answers to the president?
Yeah. The prime minister answers to the president.
Wow.
Yeah. Don't ask. I don't know the whole like interplay of how
cool.
that works.
I don't mind it.
Yeah, we couldn't decide on one, so like let's just have both.
I like it, to be honest. But I hear that Hungary is pretty based. Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah. So there's a strong push for pro-family, pro-Christianity, pro-Hungary.
Yeah.
And then there's a counter push more so from the European Union side, so outside of Hungary, to be more inclusive of the European Union, of foreigners coming in. So like every country, there's always a bit of back and forth, but there is a strong push for the family, which I think is very important.
Yeah.
Because the building blocks of society, in my mind, are families. Mm-hmm. That's where it all starts. Mm-hmm. And then it builds from there. Not the other way around, where the state's in the center and then other things are components of, they kind of attach into the state.
Yeah.
I think that's how you get tyranny and dictatorships and a bunch of terrible crap.
Yeah.
So in my mind, I think Hungary, being there, I've seen its change over the last 20 some years. Mm-hmm. I like where it's going, but I also understand that it's a small country. It can't really make those big steps that I would like it to. Mm. It's making small little baby steps, but it's progressing. I think it has a really sound and logical approach to who it lets into its borders, and why it doesn't let people into its borders. I think those are a lot more normalized than we have here in North America, where we have this laissez-faire, just like pour in type stuff, and pour in and we'll deal with you later type of deal.
The more criminal record you have, the faster and the better car you get. That's kind of the policy. It's just to my understanding.
Yeah, it's kind of messed up.
At least in the UK, that's
okay. Yeah. It's I don't think that's a good approach.
Yeah.
It's dangerous.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
It's not fair to the people coming here, because like you look around Peterborough, we have 10 cities.
Yeah.
And it's like, damn.
Yeah.
Like, we let these people in. A lot of them are not Canadian. They come from various countries. We had a large influx of Haitian people came in. They came to Quebec because Quebec spoke French, as do people in Haiti. And then Quebec kicked them out. And then they went to Ottawa. A lot of them are in Ottawa right now.
Wow.
Some come here, or they were sent to Alberta, and Alberta shipped them to Ontario.
Right.
They bought them one-way tickets. It's kind of like, man, that's a wild move. Just buy them one-way tickets on Greyhound buses when Greyhound was still a thing, and ship them out here.
Yeah.
And then they're here, and it's like, what are we going to do with them?
Yeah.
And we've opted to do little, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And so you have people, and it's not a joke.
No.
Like, the Canadian winters are not a joke.
No.
And you have people coming from nations that don't experience winter, let alone a Canadian winter. And we equip them with a camping tent and a couple promises. And we say, here you go.
Yeah.
And so they're unhappy.
Yeah.
They're in... It just looks externally like a depressive state. It might be. I would assume it is.
Yeah.
it's not helpful. So I understand the intent of wanting to help these people, but we have to go beyond just saying things and actually doing things.
Yeah.
Again, tying this back to the indigenous issue, we can say things, all these nice things, and if we don't act on them, what's the point? We just instill this divide even further, because the side that got the short end of the stick just feels betrayed yet again. We really have to get off our moral high horses and do something. And like this past election in Canada, I think, from my observation, really showed that as a nation, we love our moral high horse. We love it. Yeah. Especially when we can stick it to the US. Yeah. We love that stuff. But it doesn't get us anywhere. Yeah. Because post-election, what are we going to do now?
Yeah. Yeah, it's true. It's true.
And it's sad. And then going back to Hungary, like, there's those restrictions in place because the state is unable to provide you with the footing to actually get what you want. So why even begin if we can't properly follow through? Which I think is a more mature approach to something like immigration. And there's also a compatibility issue. This is much more prevalent in Europe than in North America. Sometimes you talk to people in North America and they don't understand. And I'm like, yeah, because there's maybe 3 languages that we speak here. English, French, and Spanish. And most of it's English. When you go to Europe and they speak, like, I don't know, 30, 40 languages. Like, it's very different there. Yeah. The cultures are very different because the borders are much smaller and the countries are much older. So they've had time to kind of build their own systems of governance, of culture, of language, of art, architecture. And then you bring in somebody that is completely foreign to that culture, and you just expect them to get along. And sometimes those two cultures could be opposed, be it politically, be it culturally, be it religiously. And then just to expect everybody to get along, that's a very naive way of playing nice.
Yeah. Well, for sure. And it's a great way to bring down a society as well.
Yes, like if you want both parties to lose, that's how you do it.
Yeah, for sure. And that sounds like a good, like a lot of immigrants who come to Canada and do it properly are really affected by the improper immigration policy that we have. Like there's like 1,000,001 good reasons as to why immigration should exist. Like it's
absolutely
very pro-immigration.
That's how my family got here.
Yeah,
some time ago. Your family.
Same with mine. Yeah, and it's good to have good people. You know what I mean? Like it's good to have growth in all of those areas. Like there's no issue there. But like if all of a sudden you're trying to do something and then you're doing it like this proper way that's outlined by like the government, and then randomly that's no longer like the case. Like I remember there's a guy I talked with, his name was Jack, and he was from Nigeria or Ghana maybe, and he had to immigrate here. And he was here for like 5 years, and he's like 50 years old. And then his wife was going to come over at some point, one of his like 4 kids. And I was like, oh, this is crazy. And then he was like, yeah, it's like, it's really hard on my family right now. I'm like, yeah, I bet. This guy's like 50 years old. And he's like, yeah. And he had to like learn all this stuff. And then there was like there's like big like families coming in, which again, it's like, I'm glad that you guys are like all together and stuff. But, no, like, who are you? What's your business? Where are you from? Do you have a history? What, you know what I mean? And just sort of let in. And it was like just off of a boat. was like, well, that's like
Yeah.
pretty wild. Like,
Yeah.
what about Jack?
Yeah.
Like, this guy, I don't know. It just, and then it also gives immigration a pretty bad flavor in the country.
Yeah.
And then people are like, no, all
They kind
immigrants.
of
And
paint
it's like,
immigrants with the same brush.
Yeah.
And you blame things on immigrants. And like you get these stereotypes.
Yeah.
And it's messy.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like India, like that. I had a lot of friends in Cape Breton from India as well.
Mm-hmm.
Great people, and I was like, oh, awesome, yeah. Mm-hmm. And then, I don't know. There's been like a huge increase of people from India moving to Canada, and like I think a lot of them are like related to a lot of crime that's happened.
Okay, yeah.
And I don't know this for sure, so this might just sound kind of...
Well, it's even on the news where you had like Indian gangs kind of export their problems from India. They bring gang members over here.
Yeah.
And then they exercise their gang activities.
Yeah.
And it's that should have been left on the boat.
Yeah. Yeah. Or not, or not even, No, it's true. It's true. So that sounds like Hungary is doing it up right. Because, like, England is not doing well as a country. As far as I can...
I am unwell.
Ireland is not doing well.
Yeah.
France is not doing well.
Yeah.
A lot of these countries. Canada is on that journey, starting that journey towards that.
Yeah.
But Hungary and Italy, I heard, were, like, quite...
Yeah. They're trying. Italy's... a different situation because of its proximity to where a lot of people come from, North Africa. That's just based off of geography. It's more exposed to immigration from that part of the world. Whereas to get to Hungary, you have to go through a bunch of countries. And so those other countries act as sort of a buffer to these columns of migrants coming in from the south.
Yeah.
At the same time, Hungary borders Ukraine. So it got... per capita at the beginning of the war, I think like the most immigrants coming in. A lot went to Poland, to Romania, but a lot came in through, there's maybe like a 40-kilometer stretch of border between Hungary and Ukraine. So a lot of Ukrainians came in through there.
Yeah, wow.
So there is immigration into Hungary from abroad.
Yeah.
It's just more monitored and controlled.
Right.
Which I think it's within every state's right to set up their own rules and regulations about it. Whether you agree with it or not is up to you.
Yeah. Well, I knew, I heard that Hungary was doing well politically or culturally, and then Poland and Italy, and it's, I don't know. I mean, it's not like, oh, this is this, and this is, like, America, yes. Canada, no. It's like, but it's nice to hear like these countries that are, I don't know, I guess doing well, and then Hungary. Like I never think of it, or like Poland. Yeah, you know what I mean. But like Poland's doing well. Yeah, it's nice. Yeah, it's nice. I would go and visit Poland. Yeah, I would go and visit a lot of countries, but there's like a life there. Yeah. Whereas the other, I don't know, like England, seems like it's being very depressed. Okay. So, I don't know. I heard Hungary had the same. Yeah, I don't know. It's good.
Yeah, it's very good. Like, what I like about the European countries is that they try to maintain their own uniqueness. Yeah. And because the geography is the way it is, you can travel through many countries rather quickly, and you get to experience those differences. And you can experience that between Ontario and Quebec, Ontario and Alberta, but it's less prominent here. Yeah. Maybe it's a bit more prominent in the States. Yeah. Like it has its regions which are quite different, like Louisiana. It kind of has like that French vibe to it. Yeah. You have like New York, which is very different from California. But in Europe, like it's much more noticeable. Yeah. And I like that. Like those differences, I think, are good. Full stop. I think it's good.
Yeah, they celebrate place again, like what we've been talking about. I agree with you. Like, there's something to be celebrated there, and they do it. I think they do it well. Yeah. So, no, I agree.
And to mesh it all together into one homogeneous kind of gray blob. Yeah. it's not
Well,
good.
it's not fun.
It's not fun.
It's not fun. Yeah.
And
no one goes, "Whoa, the Soviet Union."
yeah, right? Like, exactly.
Yeah.
That's a very good kind of segue back to what we were talking about earlier.
Let's go visit Minsk.
Like, why maintain your individuality? Which is interesting because you hear this touted so much in media and in culture of like your individuality is very important until it interferes with my profit taking. And then you have to fall in line with everyone else.
For sure.
You have to live in the house that looks like the next house.
Yeah.
You have to speak the same language as the other person, act the same way, same religion. You have to vote the same way. You have to like the same person. You have to hate the same person. No.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. It's true. It is funny. It's I don't know. That's socialism again, sort of bleeding in on that. But you sort of dehumanize people in that way.
Yeah.
I don't know, but So you have another book coming out that you're writing.
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's actually a 3-volume. It's currently set up to be a trilogy.
Right.
3 volumes. It is World War II aviation related, but it's not only around 8 German pilots. It's about a unit about the size of like the 8th Air Force or the 15th Air Force in terms of structures. It's a very high up unit that had several units under its command.
Okay.
And it's the final 6-7 months of that unit's existence before the war ended. And it's the collapse of the unit.
Okay. A German unit.
A German unit.
Wow.
Yeah, which had Hungarian units subordinated to it.
Wow.
So there's a lot of information that I'm gathering, that I have gathered. Right now I'm going through memoirs of various pilots.
Yeah.
I'm writing in various engagements that they took part in.
Wow.
Or particularly cool events to see it through their lens. I went to the UK National Archives and got a bunch of documents from them. So they have a really cool collection of documents there. The Germans had something called the Enigma machine where they were sending secret codes to each other.
Yeah.
And the Allies broke the code and they got to read what the Germans were sending to each other. So I got to view those transcripts.
Wow.
Which is wild.
Yeah.
And you're holding like the volume because they're bound. These are thicker sheets of paper with like typed out letters and numbers on it, bound in like these crude leather bindings. And I took out like maybe 70 volumes worth. That, like 200 to 500 pages each, and I just like went through all of them. It was a lot of work.
And what did they read? Like, what was the content?
Yeah, a lot of it was, sometimes it was just trivial stuff of like the commander has arrived from his leave, all the way to secret plans of we're planning this attack at this hour.
Wow.
These are the units that are to be involved. Or I've even found discussions between military leaders and the church over what should happen to a civilian population.
Wow.
Intelligence that they were sending about the enemy to each other. Stuff like that.
Wow.
General radio traffic type stuff.
Okay. Wow. That's amazing.
Yeah.
So you're looking at that and you're looking at this unit within the last 6 months. Do you go into these projects with like a hypothesis, or do you just go in with like kind of open-ended, what I find is what I find? Like, what are you looking for?
Yeah, interesting. So I approach this project less so of even the first one, we didn't have our hypothesis was there's probably going to be some mismatch between claims and victories, between claims and losses. And then what that ratio ends up being is unknown. But we assume that there would be a difference. For this, it's less so a hypothesis, it's more so a chronology. So I'm going day by day from like October 1, 44 to May 8, 1945, day by day all the way through.
Wow.
And there's some sections that will be related to the combat, but due to their specificity, if that's even a word, I'm not going to write about that subject in the main block of text. I'm extracting it, putting it in its own chapter, which I've dubbed in context. So it'd be in context, fuel, production, or claiming system, or whatever.
Right.
Because it's more appropriate to talk about it within its own chapter than shove it into the chronology somewhere.
Right.
And so in those in context chapters, I might have some hypothesis about certain things, like for fuel, what kind of role aviation fuel played in the war in the last 6 months, or about production, about how production changed, why it changed, that kind of stuff. At the very end, there might be a chapter about what could have been altered in order to save more lives, what decisions could have been made.
Yeah.
Because they're retreating throughout the 6 months, and a lot of it's chaos. And somebody makes a decision to go this way, but they fell into a trap.
Right.
It's like if they would have made a decision to go left instead of right, they might have avoided that encirclement, and they could have saved more people.
Right.
Or if they would have just abandoned the city instead of, hunkering down and defending it, the city would have been saved.
Yeah.
Because it wouldn't have been bombed to smithereens.
Yeah.
That kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And then there's also a post-war section that I'm hoping on writing. A brief biography of what happened to these people afterwards. Because a lot of the times, like, May 8th, war's over, curtains come down, story's over.
Yeah.
No, those people had lives afterwards. Just the brief, like, post-film credits of what happened to the person.
Sure. Wow. And do you know what did happen to any of them yet?
A lot of them, yeah. A lot of them became POWs for a time. A lot of them went to France and they were imprisoned there, or in Austria, or they went to the Gulag somewhere in Siberia.
Gosh.
And then they came home, wherever home was, and they had to start anew.
Wow, okay.
And then I don't really want to get into the weeds of their biographies, because that's not what I'm writing. It's just to let the reader know from the moment they left their unit or the war ended, kind of what happened to them.
Right. Interesting.
And maybe like a date of death.
Yeah.
At some point.
Yeah. They did this and then they did this. Wow, okay. Interesting. That's interesting. So why did you choose this topic?
Good question. The first book I felt was a bit too niche. I wanted to write the first book. I really liked it. Sold over 500 copies. I think it did decent for the type of book it was. Like, we're not writing a Shakespeare or a Harry Potter that we're going to make billions off of.
Yeah.
It's to a niche audience about a subject we felt impassioned enough to write only about that. This one is going to be more broad. Again, going back to borders and geography, it's not just going to be Hungary. It's going to be Hungary and parts of the former Yugoslav region, Croatia, Bosnia, Serbia, Austria as well, and then bits of Slovakia. So larger geographical base, hopefully to catch a larger audience, more units, more nationalities, just broader in scope.
Yeah. Just to look at and then broader, and then you're curious as to how these units handle the loss of momentum and then the collapse of their army, essentially.
Exactly, how they fought and how they eventually ended up in a state where they had to capitulate.
They were just like,
there's nothing left to do.
Yeah. It is interesting, like, thinking about how far the I don't know. You're like, oh, we still got something here. Like, oh no, we don't. Like the Battle of the Bulge was kind of that in my mind, like the one last push for effort, and then in reality, like to my understanding, it was like, okay, we'll go in here, and then it just turned like all structure of the army just kind of collapsed after that.
Exactly.
As far as I understand.
Yeah, like the Battle of the Bulge, to my understanding, weather played a really important factor for
very
the German
helpful
side.
For Germany, yeah.
Like I've come to realize that like some people like to focus on like the V weapons, the vengeance weapons that they had, the V1 bomb, the V2 bomb.
Right.
They would terrorize England with. It's like, no, Germany's secret weapon at the end of the war was the weather. Like that's all what helped them, because they were so down in the gutters in terms of their operational efficiency and their ability to win that if it wasn't for the weather, a lot of their offensive pushes would have just collapsed instantly. Yeah,
because once the fog lifted off of that, they were very exposed to the air.
Yeah,
because the Air Force, which I guess is what you're probably writing about, was already dismantled at that
exactly
point.
Yeah.
And the other interesting thing I like about World War II history, there's many things I like about it, but a lot of the Germans were on heroin,
Okay,
and
yeah.
a lot of them were on a lot of them were on heroin or maybe
Like crack or something.
yeah, crack, and it makes you very focused, driven, apathetic to killing people. You have a ton of energy, but after 4 years, you lose all motivation, and then you despair a little bit
Yeah.
if you've been consistently taking it for 4 years. And if you look at a lot of them were in the Blitzkrieg were on heroin, and then they walked through in like 4 days or something. They walked through France and Belgium and then maybe it was 2 weeks. I don't know how long it was, but and then 4 years later, their whole army just starts to like collapse,
Fall
like
apart.
apathy.
Yeah.
And of course, it was bigger than just everyone was on drugs and got exhausted. But I think that was a big part of it too. It was like the push and the control and the momentum, the energy. You know? And that's kind of an interesting thing that I find not a lot of people talk about.
Yeah,
I don't know. That's,
it's interesting. Like this push to have operational momentum and to keep push forward.
Yeah.
Like these drugs were used as a proxy for the real deal, because we have this idea of Blitzkrieg. It was a highly motorized army.
Yeah.
It wasn't.
Really?
Oh, it wasn't. No. Like.
Well, how'd they get? They just walk?
They walk. They use a lot of horses.
Yeah.
A lot of oxen.
Yeah.
A lot of walking.
Yeah.
Like I hope if you were in that army, I hope you like walking, because that's what you're doing for a lot of the time.
I think they were all on drugs because
they didn't care. Right?
Yeah.
And so this was like a miracle pill to help drive momentum. It was a proxy for the fact that you lacked motorized equipment. So you kind of needed this cheap thing. But then it had, like, when you came off your high, you were next to useless. You were a liability when you were on it, because you were just crazy. And because you were so crazy, you were more prone to conduct your way that was extremely violent to civilian and foe. And it like that just causes a lot of diplomatic problems.
Definitely.
And like it's just a bad mix.
Yeah,
Very
for
bad
sure.
mix.
And if you're not, and as soon as you start to lose momentum, everyone's against you. Like that. I don't know. So it was interesting. Like, I don't know, that I remember reading up on that or hearing it, or I don't know where I even saw that. But then I was like, oh, like that's kind of, I don't know. It makes sense, I guess.
Yeah.
Like,
drug yourself into drug yourself so you can achieve a goal. Type of deal. Like kind of do that. By the way, tie back to Canada. Like that's what our politicians did after 2015.
Yeah.
To like, instead of making your life better, you know what we can do?
Yeah.
We can legalize weed.
Yeah.
So you can forget about how shit you're living.
Yeah.
And if it's too much, then we're going to legalize medically assisted death so you can kill yourself.
Yeah.
Like that's the solution. That's the arc of their solution.
Yeah.
It's like,
yeah.
You're offering these cheap proxies so people feel like they might be winning in life.
Yeah.
But they never actually win.
Yeah. It'll come to a bit of a halt soon.
Yeah. And I'm so, like, the more I mature and the more I see the world, the more I see, like, man, we're getting fed these proxies from businesses, from governments, and we fall for them. And it's so, sometimes it gets really frustrating. Like, man, we fell into this as well. And you see this on the moral front all the time, with we're pretending to be moral, standing up for the states, but then we have tent cities in Peterborough. Like, makes no sense. Again,
for sure.
Like, that's a positive, cheap proxy. Or you can get, like, extremely personal, right? You could have, like, masturbation as the proxy for sex.
Right.
Yeah, it can get you kind of halfway, pun intended, but it's not the real deal.
Yeah.
Like, we're going after these proxies.
Yeah. Yeah. For sure. Yeah. I mean, you can't shortcut
It's like a cheap shortcut.
Yeah,
exactly.
You can't shortcut these.
Or another one is like video game levels for actually succeeding in life and building a career or a business for yourself.
Yeah.
Again, it's a cheap proxy. It imitates the real thing, but it's not the real thing.
Yeah, for sure.
Of like going to university, getting your degree, thinking that will make you smart. Just waving around because you got a piece of paper.
Yeah.
Like, no.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
That's not the real deal.
Yeah. Yeah. So what do you say to that? What's your response to all that? Or like
cheap proxy?
Or like, I don't know, do you fall into them? Do you avoid them? How do you avoid them?
Yeah. They're attractive. And of course you fall into them.
Right.
But you have to be aware enough to know that, okay, this is a proxy. I've kind of fallen into it.
Right.
What is it the proxy of?
Right.
Like lifelong renter for house ownership, that kind of thing. And there's some points in your life where a proxy makes more sense than the real deal. Like if you're 18 and you sign a mortgage, like I hope you have your life together because like a mortgage is big.
Yeah, you're in it.
Right?
Yeah.
Like it's fine to stay in that perhaps proxy mode of renting until you have enough for a down payment or until housing becomes affordable enough for you to enter that market.
Right.
So you have to be aware.
Yeah.
And then know what the real deal is. And then depending on your situation, know when to jump from the proxy to the real deal.
And you just, okay, that makes sense. Just educate yourself on the topic.
Exactly.
Know when it's when it's a shortcut.
Yes.
And know that every shortcut has a side effect.
Yes.
I guess. Yeah. Well, that makes sense. Well, you know what, Dan? That's a hell of a place to finish off.
Okay.
All right. Well, looking forward to that book.
Thank you. It's probably going to take another year and a bit to get the first volume out.
All right.
We're trying.
Well, that's pretty sweet. And it's a 3-volume.
I hope to turn it into a 3-volume.
Wow. That's sweet,
trilogy.
man. That's sweet.
Yeah, about 200 pages a piece.
Jeez.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
That's a lot. Yeah.
That's a lot. Well, look forward to it, man. I appreciate you coming on.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. God bless everybody.
Yeah.